right, thank you and welcome everybody. I'm delighted to see people filing into this virtual room. As we get started, a lot of you know how to use the chat already. Please use the chat to get us started on this topic. And I'd love to hear from everybody here, who has actually been to an African country? Have you been there before? And if so, which one have you been to? Just pop that into the chat to get us started on thinking about where we are and getting sort of situated, I guess, in this virtual space that is also a physical space. Has anybody here been to Africa in the past? Morocco. Thanks, Katie. Cheiko has been to Senegal. Nwadituoto. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing names. Nigeria. Egypt and Tanzania. Thank you, Pamela. Hi, Abubakar. Oh yeah, lots of countries. Okay, so this is a well-rounded group here. Okay, aspirationally, thank you, Therese. Always wanted to go to Kenya. Yes. Okay, so we can see here there's quite a few folks that have been to a lot of African countries before, and quite a range as well from across the continent. Well, today's webinar is on climate justice lessons from Africa. I'm your host. I co-chair the BECC conference, Behavior, Energy, and Climate Change. BECC is co-convened by ACEEE, where I'm at, and the Center for in CIEE in Berkeley, and Stanford, of course, Stanford Economics Department. And we're all here because of the BECC conference, which sponsors these webinars. And this year's theme is Driving Transformation. And just a reminder that early bird registration is open now, so don't miss out on that. If you've submitted an abstract, you should be hearing from us shortly, and we look forward to seeing you all in November. Now, this year's conference has two parts. The virtual component is these webinars, which you're here observing today, so thank you for joining us. And of course, the in-person conference happening in November 12th to 15th in Sacramento, where we hope to see you all this fall. A huge thank you to our sponsors. Without the sponsors, none of this would be possible. If you want to become a sponsor, send us an email. And you're all familiar with Zoom after so many years of pandemic life, but just to recap, please remain muted while the webinar is happening. Use the Q&A button for questions. Today we're using Zoom webinar as opposed to Zoom meeting, so we have this special new button, the Q&A button. Put your questions in there and we'll be monitoring it throughout, but we'll also be watching the chat for discussions throughout the webinar. So feel free to chat with anybody here, with the whole group, and we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll ask questions to the speakers at the end of the webinar. We'll have plenty of time for your questions at the end of the presentations. We have lots of speakers today. So I'm going to, without further ado, turn it over to our moderator, Pamela Fan at Impact Energy. Thank you so much for joining us, Pamela.
Thank you, and thank you, Reuven. I've had the pleasure of working with Reuven and the BECC team over the last couple of years as the equity advisor for the BECC conference. And I think that we have the unique opportunity to be able to bring some wonderful young African climate leaders together today, along with HBCU Green Fund, who's doing amazing work, not only here in the States, but also in Africa to help support these young leaders. I'm Pamela Fan, again, with Impact Energy, a Black woman-owned energy services company that supports project installation work as well as workforce development with an equity basis as a part of that work. Thank you for having us. Thank you for allowing us to present to you all today about this wonderful work. I'd first like to introduce Felicia Davis, who will then introduce our panelists. Felicia Davis is a really staunch advocate for measurable reductions in greenhouse gas emissions through energy efficiency retrofits, green building, renewable energy solutions, and an array of sustainable practices. In 2016, she co-founded the HBCU Green Fund to help finance green projects at historically Black colleges and universities. She serves on the steering committees of International Endowments Network, Croatan Institute, and the Just Transition Power Force. She was a founding board member for Green 2.0, dedicated to increasing racial diversity and environmental leadership, and a member of the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper Board. She convenes the Sustainable Future for Africa and Diaspora. Climate justice has been her primary focus since attending COP6 in Hague in 2000, and she served as the Georgia Airkeeper Director and first director of Mothers and Others for Clean Air. She directed the $2 million UNCF Building Green Initiative, advancing sustainability for Black, Hispanic serving in tribal colleges and universities. She's an Environmental Leadership Program Fellow and IGEL Fellow, an author of seminal Era of Injustice report. She also produced the MSI Green Report, Sustainable Campuses Building Green at Minority Serving Institutions, and the first ever HBCU Green Report. Felicia is working to establish an innovative green financing platform that will help democratize investment opportunities and expand renewable energy options. Projects under her management include the BIPOC Climate Scholars Project, HBCU HBCU Energy Fellows Project, and the Sustainable Africa Future Project. Felicia's favorite question is, if we get it right, what will it look like? Please welcome Felicia Davis with HBCU Green Fund.
Thank you so much, and probably to sound like shorter bios, but thank you for that, Pamela. And I am really excited about this conversation today, and delighted to introduce to this audience some amazing young climate advocates from the continent of Africa, and really spanning across the continent. And I'm not going to take up a lot of time, but framing my favorite question, if we get it right, what will it look like? I also identify 4 or 5 critical problems, challenges confronting the world as a framework for listening to the young people that you'll hear from. And we're going to go first to Bashiru, and they'll each introduce themselves. But my issues, or what brought me to global warming, climate change as the quintessential seminal issue of my lifetime, is one, knowing that the lifestyle that we have in America is driving the destruction of natural habitat, and we're exporting how we are. So we have the destruction of natural habitat. If I'm thinking about the growth in human population, well, Africa has 500 million young people 20 years old or younger, and mostly younger. So if you just think about that demographic imperative, this growing gap between rich and poor, both nations and individuals, with growing unemployment as a kind of a global issue that's even beginning to seriously impact developed nations as we have AI and everything else. But an increasing poverty, so more people impoverished, so as we go supposedly forward. And then at the same time, we have growing science and technology driven issues, whether it's nuclear, gene, now artificial intelligence, you name it. Science and technology is now contributing to problems, perhaps more so than solving. And then finally, we have the breakdown in the moral fabric or cohesion at the time that we have more devastating weaponry. So that's the backdrop against which I do my work. And so I look for what's the most impact that we can have individually and collectively. And I'm pleased to be in this forum because we know now that technology nor legislature will solve the problem. So legislation is not the answer, policy is not the answer, and technology is not the answer. In fact, the answer is behavioral change at the individual and collective level. We're looking for a shift in consciousness when the collective body politic decides that we're going to go a different direction. So it's against that. So with that frame, HBCU Green Fund that sees Black colleges and universities as the base or anchor for both liberation and sustainability for people of African descent. And with that kind of backdrop and base, we reach out to cultivate youth leadership. And I think that's enough said from me. With that setting of the stage, I want to bring Bashiru in to speak first because he is a Yali Fellow, a Mandela Africa Young Leader Fellow, and he will come in, share with us, and then have to go off to do work with his fellowship. It's very prestigious. This young man is doing amazing work. And Bashiru, I give you the stage.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Okay, thank you. I would like to start by expressing my profound gratitude and heartfelt appreciation for this privilege of sharing my experience and my project with you. I am Bashiru Kuruma. I am from Sierra Leone. I'm a natural resource management specialist, a conservationist, youth and climate justice activist. I work for the National Tourism Board as Planning and Development Officer, and I have also founded my organization. I call it Keep Africa Beautiful Sierra Leone, where I am the founder and the CEO. So, having said that, I have just been selected as a Mandela Washington Fellow, and I am also a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Young African Conservation Fellow. And to the presentation. This presentation entails the work I am doing currently and what I intend to do. So I call the title Establishment of the First Climate Justice and Entrepreneurial Leadership School in Sierra Leone. And this is how far I have come. As you can see from the photo here, we have constructed it from the foundation, and we have got pillars, and we are now about to have a roof on the top. So go to the next slide, please. Good. So what is the problem we are trying to solve? Climate change impacts is very, very much common now. It is the biggest problem we are having in the world. But again, the justice aspects, people who are very vulnerable are contributing less to the problem. So the group like children and youth are at stake. Young people, this problem poses direct threats to their survival. Young people's ability to survive and expand their opportunities to reach their full potential. So children and youth are less responsible for climate change. So therefore, we need to factor this particular group in this problem. This challenge is leading to the high unemployment rates among young people in my community due to skill gaps. So we have discovered that these young people are not being factored in engaging in decision making, in policy making. So I have identified these young people, children and youth, for us to create a learning space for them, which will provide education for these young people in related for them to understand what is this problem. Countries like Sierra Leone, where I am from, most young people don't even know about climate change, more especially the technicalities that involve. So that's why I want to create a learning space, a school I call the Climate Justice and Entrepreneurial Leadership School, which we build that skill. The next slide, please. So the vision, we envision a country in which every youth and child is empowered with knowledge, skill, and capacity to realize their complete potential in environmentally healthy, economically sound, and socially just society. So we actually want these young people to be engaged, to be empowered with skills and knowledge, which will help them in these critical moments of life, because every policy they are making now is going to have more impact on young people, on children and youth, because they are going to live longer with it. So they need skills, they need this empowerment, they need knowledge that will ensure that all of these things, they are involved in it and they have an input in it. So we are aiming at creating an institution that will build the capacity of young people with knowledge and skill, entrepreneurial leadership, conservation, sustainable agriculture, and other climate actions. Most of the education provided in our countries today is not providing job for our young people. So that is why we are going to build skills like waste management, waste recycling. How can we transform our plastic waste to another usable products? How can we engage in climate smart agriculture with children, with youth? This is what I am trying to do. Next slide, please. Our work, what have we done so far? So we are currently mobilizing and using concerts and music to engage and educate, empower young people in schools and local communities, as well as community leaders to take action to combat climate crisis. So actually we are using music, we are using concerts to ask to them, what is this problem of climate change? How can they take action? We are also working on providing solutions to the challenge of lack of institution, as I indicated earlier. This learning space will provide an opportunity for skill training, climate action, and educational leadership. So we are also planning to create an African historical and cultural eco-village for children and youth to learn about the history, culture, and places in Africa. So that is one of our biggest plans. What are the challenges we are facing? Limited funding opportunities, one of the key challenges. We want to thank HBCU Green Fund for the support they are giving us so far to move to where we are, but it is not enough. The team expectation management, my team is expecting that we should be able to motivate them, but because of limited funding, we are not being able, limited technical and material resources. So we are recommending that we need collaboration, we need cooperation and support and sponsorship. I want to end by thanking all of you again for this wonderful invitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bashiro. That was excellent. I think it gives people a good perspective on Sierra Leone. From there, I'm going to go to Sarah, who is in Uganda. So, Sarah.
Give me 1 second, please, while I pull up her slides, and Sarah, thank you.
It's all right. While you do that, let me take this time to introduce myself. First, I'm very glad to be here today. I'm very glad to be sharing with you some of the experiences that we have gained from our climate action work. And for purposes of introduction, I'm Kweritsa Chebjera. I'm a climate justice activist from Uganda. I also happen to be a United Nations Youth Fellow for this year's cohort in Uganda. And as Pamela is pulling that the presentation out, let me talk a little bit about what we are currently doing in Uganda. So I'm the founder of EcoSensities Uganda, founder and CEO of EcoSensities Uganda, initiative that we founded in 2021. And what we are looking at is that in Uganda, there's a very big problem of waste mismanagement. And then also there's a very high reliance on firewood that's coming from cutting down of trees for fuel production. So what we decided to do was particularly look at waste mismanagement, and we decided to come up with something that is going to manage waste within the city setting. So a little bit about Uganda, they created 11 new cities, and in all these 11 urban centers, in all these 11 cities, there's a very high level of waste mismanagement. And yet the highest percentage of people within this setting actually have access to mobile phones, they have access to the internet. So we thought to ourselves, like, what can we do? How can we use technology to solve the problem of waste mismanagement in these cities? So what we decided to do, I and a group of colleagues developed a waste management application. You can move to the next slide. We developed a waste management application. And basically the waste management application is focused on, like, because users that use the application just order for waste pickup and then go collect all sorts of waste from their homes. Another challenge that, you know, cities actually are really facing is the fact that most people within the city setting, when they have waste, they dump the waste along the roadsides. And, you know, when, like, for example, when it rains, the waste actually goes to drainage channels that actually affects people that are living within the slumpy areas of the city. And they have no way of helping themselves. And also sometimes when waste is taken to landfills, waste, of course, you know, it produces CO2 and therefore, you know, contributes to climate change. So we thought to ourselves, what can we do? So we developed the application, and what we are doing is that we're collecting waste from homes and at a very small cost. And when we collect the waste, we're not taking this waste to the landfills. We are taking the waste to a collection center. And although this is something that we are developing, and we've not really done it yet, we are looking at building big biogas plants within the cities. Right now, we're doing a pilot study in one of the cities in the north, that is Lira City. And so we're building a biogas plant, and we want to transform the waste that we're collecting into biogas and package the biogas in cylinders and then sell it out to the communities. But not only that, we are also looking at making charcoal briquettes so that we cater for the other population that is not able to afford the biogas. Another, I think the next slide. So that is the application that we have developed. It's on Play Store. You can just check, it's called the Echo app. You can check and see all the features that we have. One other unique feature about the application that we have is that it has an awareness raising tool. So we use it as an awareness raising tool. All our users are able to see the latest on how they can manage waste, you know, how they can reduce and recycle waste within the home setting. But also, next slide. Also, what we are currently looking at right now is reaching out to schools. Because of this digital innovation that we came up with, we are looking at empowering other students within Uganda. Because we are students, we developed this when we were still students at university. So we are now doing an outreach campaign to different schools. And what we're basically doing is that we are, you know, encouraging these students to come up with innovative ideas to solve the climate change crisis. So this was during one of an outreach that we had to a certain school here still in the north, and we're talking to them about innovation. And when we talk to them about innovation, we ask them to present some of the ideas that they had. These children had very innovative ideas. You know, most of them even had ideas about carbon capture, some of the ideas that we really didn't think that we would get from an institution that is far in the north, because innovation is not something that is promoted beside. Yes, and then our future prospects is that we're looking at, because schools are very heavily reliant on firewood for fuel production, we're looking at also establishing biogas plants within schools using fecal matter, so that the schools can no longer heavily rely on firewood, but rather use this renewable energy for food production within schools, for lighting and all other things. Yeah, so from my side, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Creativity, innovation, and the education theme continues on. From there, I think I'm going to go to Abubakar. So Abubakar, you're up next. Come off mute and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much. Am I audible? All right. By way of introduction, I'm Abubakar Kruma from Liberia. I'm a youth and climate justice advocate. and I'm a member of the Yango AIDS Working Group. I'm also the founder and executive director of the Climate Activists Association of Liberia. The Climate Activists Association of Liberia is an umbrella organization that aims to network activists and other community-based groups across Liberia and 8 neighboring countries to help combat the climate and environmental crisis with key interests in the SDGs 1, 2, and 13 to help achieve a sustainable Africa for all. Our team is fully led, managed, and operated by young people. All our work on all issues is from a youth perspectives. It is the youth who identify the issue they want to campaign about, determine the root causes of the problem, and select and implement evidence-based strategies to address those root causes. The Climate Activists Association of Liberia actually work around the climate action, agriculture, forest and nature, environment, education and youth, pollution actions, conflict and disaster, and technology. But then right now, due to the funding, because we only have the HBCU Green Fund there in the US that is currently supporting us throughout our projects. And we also use this medium to extend our heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to Madam Felicia Davis and the entire HBCU Green Fund team there in the US. Our active work is around climate action, pollution action, agriculture, environment, education, and youth, and forest development. So with that, I want to take this time to welcome you all to the slide. Next slide, please. So today, I'll be discussing on the topic, why Africa should unite to fight climate change. The reason is simple, because throughout this crisis, Africa is not contributing any to the global emission. We are not even contributing 1% for Liberia here to the global emission, but then we are the ones facing the major burns. As you can see from the slide, the first picture there is telling about flooding. The picture you see right there on the screen is the highway that leads right in front of my house, leading to the Rabat International Airport. That road is flooded on a very normal routine. Every time it rains heavily, the road gets flooded and homes got destroyed, property got damaged from the flooding across Liberia and even other parts in West Africa and Africa at large. The next thing that we experience here in West Africa and Africa at large is erosion. I visited a couple of communities across Mosurado, the capital of Liberia. One of those communities is West Point. The West Point community is a slum community nearby Monrovia, the capital of Liberia, that is being affected hugely by the high level rise of the sea. Homes are being destroyed and people are being displaced on a yearly basis. This year, as I speak to you, the West Point community is being hugely affected by the high level rise of the sea. So erosion is one thing that has been affecting us here in Liberia and in Africa at large. And the next thing that I would love to talk about is drought. Drought is one thing from the climate crisis that has been affected us very, very much. And we as Africans are not contributing to these problems. We need assistance to adapt to this problem and to mitigate these challenges. So the Climate Activists Association of Liberia means of working around a sustainable Africa and a world at large is by undertaking a project that we launched on Earth Day, April 22, 2023. We call the Climate Smart Agriculture Project. We are into this, we're planting rice. As you can see from the screen, we are planting rice. We are planting avocado, groundnut, mango. We also have a huge land that we set aside for coconut nursery. Because as I said earlier on, we are affected by the sea, the high level rise of the sea, right? Most of these homes that are affected from around the coastal belt of Liberia, we are using this coconut to plant across the coastal region of Liberia, and it will help to mitigate the erosion of our land along the coastal region of Liberia. So next slide, please. So all of what we have been doing through the assistance from the HBCU Green Fund, there's currently the status of our work. Firstly, into the rice and the cassava planting. That is to talk about the SDG 2. Sustainable agriculture is the heart of the 2030 agenda and first fundamental step to securing zero hunger. We at the Climate Activism Association of Liberia are working tirelessly to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture for all. The next is the SDG 13. We are working exceedingly hard to strengthen resilient and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazard and natural disaster here in Liberia and the world at large. We've been active in more awarenesses and also doing coconut nursery for disaster defense, for coastal defense, and tree planting projects across Liberia. And lastly, it is the SDG 1. As you may be aware, Liberia population consists mainly of smallholder farmers that struggle to produce enough to feed ourselves. This has led to poverty in Liberia, reaching 68% and 35% of the population being malnourished. This is why the Climate Activism Association of Liberia is working mainly with indigenous people and marginalized community to help achieve a sustainable Africa and a war at large. I want to thank you all and thank Madam Felicia Davy once again.
Thank you, Abubakar. And I'm hoping as we go through these presentations from HBCU Green Fund, we've been deeply moved to adjust our agendas, behaviors, and actions as we learn more about what young people are struggling with, working to accomplish, and what they need to move forward. So it's my hope that as the audience is hearing, that you listen with your kind of your skills and expertise, but also with your heart, knowing that we regard all youth and children as our own, and we can see the tremendous need to alter behaviors. So I'm really looking forward to hearing questions and comments from the audience, since behavior is what brings this particular audience together. And with that, I'm going to go to Sharon Gaki from Kenya. So Sharon.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Sharon Gaki from Kenya. I'm currently the co-founder of International Consortium on Climate and Biodiversity. And we as ICCB, our thematic areas that we are working on are climate resilience and adaptation, biodiversity and health, gender and inclusivity, as well as the climate justice. So as the slides load, I would want to thank Bashiru for speaking about the drought that is currently happening in the Horn of Africa, because as we all know, the Horn of Africa has been experiencing the severe drought conditions, and currently we're experiencing the worst of these situations in 4 decades. And this has been leading to a range of interconnected challenges in the region. In the wake of this drought, we have witnessed, thank you. In the wake of this drought, we have witnessed several devastating consequences. These include food and water scarcity, malnutrition, livestock loss, displacement, and also increased vulnerability of diseases. The situation has placed immense pressure on the communities and their ability to sustain their livelihoods. Amidst these challenges, we've seen women playing a crucial role in caring for their communities and enhancing resilience as well. And therefore, we as ICCB, we came up together with my co-founder and my amazing youths who we are working together with to help the people in our community. As you can see in our first slide, this was our first event that we held in International Women's Day, whereby we had capacity building workshop as well. We taught them about the ways of how to move into climate smart agriculture, and also new renewable energy, and out of it they can economize it. When it comes to agriculture, they can sell some of the food products, make money out of it. When it comes to the clean energy, we brought in some new jikos, that is in Swahili. In English, it's stoves, new stoves, whereby they can make some they use in home to curb climate impacts, and also sell some of these stoves, whereby some of the women right now, as we speak, they have ventured in agriculture, and some of the pictures are here where we are showing them, because most of these women are from the pastoral communities, and therefore it's so hard for them to adapt into a large-scale kind of a farming, and therefore we came up into simple ways on how to do the agriculture as well as new renewable energies. Historically, women in the region of Africa and in Kenya have been always responsible for water collection, food production, and household management. So in the face of the drought, their roles have become even more critical. First, few women have taken on the responsibility of finding alternative sources of managing water scarcity. On these, they are forced to travel long distance to find water, at times putting their life into risk, and others have been losing their lives. Other girls have been kidnapped into rapism, and so many other impossibilities and risk and dangers as well has been happening in their lives. And so we came in as ICCB and recognized the critical role of women in addressing these drought-related challenges, knowing it is so important to provide them with increased access to resource, education, and decision-making powers. And so when we talk about empowering women, we want to thank HBCU Green Fund so much for coming in hand to support this dream of ICCB financially, to support these women, and also to make their dreams come true by supporting them to sustain their farming methods, whereby currently, as we are speaking, HBCU as a project whereby they are funding us with fertilizers. So ICCB, thank you so much for supporting us on this. So we also offer this kind of training to sustain them. And also on terms of training, we also plan some of the activities to raise more awareness on climate education. On the screen, you can see like on World Environmental Day, we organized a run whereby women, children, elderly, everyone in the community participated and made it a family kind of a run. And through this, we saw so many people come in together, be taught about the climate adaptation and mitigation awareness. In this day, we raised funds, whereby it will be, some of the funds will be used in construction of a secondary school library, and also to create more climate awareness. On the next slide, please. So in my conclusion, currently I attended a women's championing for climate in the face of in the face of a crisis in Geneva, Swaziland, and I was speaking about how women are championing for their resilience in the face of drought on the Horn of Africa. I also got a chance to attend the SBs, whereby it was my first SBs to attend in Bonn, and being my first SBs, it was so critical for me because I didn't know how to move around, but whereby I've attended some of the UN international meetings, I was so able to follow on the agriculture negotiations, but unfortunately we didn't get the decided role on where the agriculture has been decided on way forward, and it is so unfortunate for people like us who are venturing into agriculture, whereby this discussion has not been concluded on. And so I'm hoping of, as we head to COP28, the negotiations and discussion about around agriculture, they're going to be decided on, and also the support to youth as well, it is going to be taken in hand on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. And once again, do I need to unmute? Okay, so yeah, again, seeing the critical human impacts, which here in the US, we're often quite far removed, or we feel quite far removed from the day-to-day impacts that people are already experiencing. So hopefully that is a bit of a motivation to adjust habits and behaviors on a personal level, and to organize together to move people a little quicker on a collective level. And next we have Hussein. So by no means last or least, but Hussein, are you there? Oh, let's see. Do we have him? Did he fall away?
He's there. He's actually Hussein. Can you please join? He's under my name. He had trouble linking in.
Okay, so we have not two Pamela fans, but one Pamela and one Hussein.
Right. Hussein, can you join?
Come off mute. While we are trying to get him, perhaps Hussein, if you can hear us, when we should see you if you come off mute and come in. And in the meantime, Pamela, I think you were going to put forward a first question, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm actually, if we could, I'd like to, because I did miss Felicia's slides and her talking a little bit about HBCU Green Fund. My apologies for that, Felicia, as I was fumbling through trying to find where all my slides were. I would love for you to, I know, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about HBCU Green Fund.
So as you can see on this slide, and I try not to read to people, but as I said earlier, our vision and mission really is a sustainable future for people of African descent. And we kind of see ourselves with this big vision of resiliency hubs. That's, the latest lingo. But basically to have our goals clearly aligned with what we do day to day, and to engage. So here, this is a slide that's just FYI. We are able to bring people together within the COP framework, and HBCU Green Fund looks at it as an important networking opportunity for our work. And of course, young people who have more time to work are deeply engaged in the process, which I think is important. And then this last slide is showing that we have work. You're hearing from people, so this just represents, but we have micro projects in East, West, and Southern Africa, so across Sub-Saharan Africa. And with that, I'm hoping that has Hussein been able to get in? And if not, Pamela, I'm going to kick it to you, and we'll see if he gets there before we're finished.
Yeah, I think he is having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, and so everyone should know that we are, you are actually speaking live with people across the continent of Africa. So almost as far away as you can get so people from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, which is quite a ways, especially going over land. And so we often lose bandwidth, and people do not have the ease of connecting that we have here and somewhat take for granted. So, but with that, Pamela?
Yes, and I think that he is having, he messaged me and said he's having issues and unable to speak through the mic. So thank you for joining us, Hussein. I'll make sure that as a follow-up to this webinar, if we send this information out, that we will send information about your country and your work there as well. So I have a question for you young leaders, just one question as I think about climate change and the work that we're all doing to combat this. What are some of the behaviors that you'd like to see changed in your communities as it relates to climate change? What are some of the behaviors you'd like to see changed? And if you can answer, give us a short answer. I'm going to start with Sharon. What are some of those behaviors you'd like to see changed in your community?
So, Pamela, maybe go to Bashiro, and Bashiro, after you answer, you can dip away. I think the audience will understand that you have another engagement right now.
Great call. Bashiru, that question is yours. What are some of the behaviors you'd like to see changed in your community as it relates to climate change? Okay, he may have already left, Felicia.
Okay, back to you then.
All right, Sharon. Oh, no, there he is. He's there.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, we know that you're engaged in other things.
Yeah.
Did you want to tell us about some of the behaviors you'd like to see changed in your community as it relates to climate change?
Sure. I'm sorry, I was in a meeting. So actually the behavior I want to change, I want to start it from children and youth, their attitude and practice. And that's why I want to target their knowledge first. That's why I'm emphasizing on education, because when you talk about behavioral change, it starts with awareness, consciousness, what is going to drive that change. So my platform is going to firstly target the minds of young people, children and youths, and try to engage them to be environmentally conscious, to be mindful about their environment, their impact on their environment, to let them know that they are responsible for whatsoever in their surrounding. So that is like going to let them become ambassadors. That is my own target. Environmental ambassadors, wherein they will represent, they will be able to talk about human impact on the environment. They will be able to relate with the environment. So that is first of all change their knowledge, their attitude, the practice in terms of like waste management. I want them to know that they are responsible for whatsoever waste they deposit, because in Africa, we don't have that kind of education. Tree planting, I want them to know that it is very important for your environment to be green. That attitude, that's sustainability best practices, water resource management, how will they manage sustainably their water? Because that is one of the critical challenges we are having. So in a nutshell, I want to let the knowledge of our kids and our young people, their practice, their attitude and their behavior change with regard to how they relate with their environment, how they impact their environment, and how environment is important to their life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And quickly, Sharon, what kind of what behaviors would you like to see changed? Can you unmute for us? I think you're muted. And we do have a question from the audience as well that we'd like to get to.
Hello.
Sharon?
Please repeat the question again.
Yeah, it's just what are some of the behaviors you'd like to see changed in your community? If you could quickly let us know some of the behaviors.
So coming from a pastoral community, whereby there are little percentage of people who know about climate change, and also they know the impacts that they are facing currently about the livestock loss and the water scarcity of food as well. It has been caused by climate change, and therefore they think like it has been a curse or something, or it doesn't know like the change of weather patterns, the prolonged rain seasons. It has been due to the impacts of climate change. And therefore, I would love to see the behavior of them assuming it is the otherwise being erased completely, and having the complete awareness of the climate change and how they can come into the helping, into the curbing of the impacts of climate change in engaging in activities which by help in curbing of climate change, and also get ways of adaptation, because as we speak right now, there are people who lost their livestock. As someone who was having 1,000 livestock, right now they have like literally nothing, or 50 of them. The livelihoods of these people has been completely changed, and therefore they cannot go back to where they were before these laws happened. And so for them to know how they are going to adapt in during this kind of a season, and how to get new ways of adaptation, and change their livelihoods, and accept that it has gone. Which other way are we going to take it in life, and continue with our livelihoods, support our incomes, and also have our kids continue with schools, and also not getting married, the young girls hurry because they want them to go so that they can have money out of it, and also let some girls leave their homes because they cannot feed them. So I would love to see the behavior of them learning about climate change and how they are going to adapt. And, they accept that this is there, we are living with it. Unless something is done to change it, it is not going to go away. And therefore, we are going to learn how we are going to adapt, stick to the new ways of adaptation, and keeping our livelihoods as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Reuven, I know you have a question from the audience, and Hussein is back on with us now, so I'd like for him to answer this question if possible.
Sure. Thank you for everybody for joining so far, and it's been a lively discussion. It's great to hear what everybody's doing. This question comes from Karen Blakelock. She says the continent of Africa is really an exciting opportunity to become a leader in renewable energy. She cites the example that much of Africa jumped over the landline, went straight to cell phones. Maybe we can do something similar with renewable energy. She's asking specifically, are any of you from East Africa involved with opposition to the East African crude oil pipeline that's being built out of Uganda? She notes that it'll harm wildlife, ecosystems, communities, and more.
Okay, so that's one of our East African folks on the phone. Did you guys get that question?
So I can weigh in. I know that in Uganda, Destin, who is not on the phone, has been engaged as a climate activist, similar to climate workers here. So some of our network members are very much engaged, but it's not in situations where people are struggling so much at the day-to-day level, right? It's sometimes it's a position of affluence to simply turn your attention to fighting a large thing as devastating as it can be. So the Youngo and at the UN level, these are, tenacious advocates. So they do that work. But on the day-to-day, they are working on the community level to fight off the impacts that largely our habits in the West have rained down on others. So we have sucked up all the oil that we wanted, and now we export the a position that says to others, "Oh, leave it in the ground." And yet these are places that are energy starved. So even as a pretty staunch advocate, climate justice advocate, but I do get a little torn when there are challenges confronting nation states trying to educate populations, trying to move people around, trying to do things that traditional energy fossil fuel has driven for some of the rest. So I jump out to respond to that because it is a kind of tension as there are no offsets for keeping it in the ground. So you have nations that are comparatively impoverished and expected to make further sacrifice and not leveraging resources that others have extracted from them over time. So I will not go on a rant. Instead of that, I'm going to toss it to Hussein, who is actually in West Africa, to simply share in the last minute or so his work.
Well, there is another question, so he can answer this other question. You want to give it to him, Reuven?
Do we
Sure.
end in 2 minutes?
Yes.
I'd love to hear about his work, and as well, generally, how do you stay positive and combat eco-anxiety? This is probably something that's affecting everybody on the panel. A comment on that, and then what you're doing, and then we'll have to wrap up, unfortunately.
Thank you. So just like you've already said, I think time is already spent, so I'll just be brief. My name is Hussein Kasim. I'm with the Yongo team. I'm also part of the ACE working group of the UNFCCC. Currently, we're working on a project in Ghana called the Young Climate Innovators Program, and with the support of HBCU. So the main goal is to be able to educate, engage, and empower the youth to be able to come up with innovative ideas, solutions towards climate change. And what we're actually doing is we try to bring them together, educate them. After educating them, we empower them. We get leaders who are already in the field to train them to be able to come out with innovations that are community-based. And we are actually emphasizing on community-based solutions. So actually, this is one project that we are doing. And then with the question, because already time is spent, so I want to be a bit quick. With the question is, if it's okay, can you just repeat it?
Yes, the question was just about eco-anxiety with all the work that you are doing, and just like everybody else on the panel. How do you cope? How do you what do you do to stay positive?
I think it's all about drive, passion, because I mean, in this field, it's quite challenging, especially coming from the global south, with funding, especially with funding. I mean, you come out with very good initiatives. It's usually difficult to come out with, to get the requisite funding to fund the project. And that is why it's timely HBCU has come to support some of the initiatives on the ground. And it's really amazing. So the major challenge, the only thing that drives us, for me as an organization, as a leader of an organization, is the drive to see a change. because the moment that drives you, the rest becomes more of an add-on.
I think that
So the
that's
main thing is the passion, the drive.
That's a perfect note to end it on. As you can see, all of these young leaders are very passionate, talking about culture and the fighting against culture and behavioral change, fighting against, educating young people about their adaptation and changes and old beliefs against, trying to get that behavior change. So we've got a lot of great young people on here who are really, really trying to do this amazing work in their communities. And we know that it starts with us, as Felicia mentioned earlier. We are the ones who are responsible for those changes. If we lead in those behaviors, then others will follow us in those behaviors as well. Felicia, do you have any ending comments before we go? And then I'll turn it to you, Ruben.
I would like to say to anyone that's in the global north or the developed world, be mindful of your habits, very mindful, and let's just stop wasting as much as we're wasting. So the bit that we waste can enable someone else to live and potentially thrive. So we just throw away. We have too much, we do too much, we buy too much, we export that mentality. We got to stop.
Thank you. Reuven, turn it over to you. And thank you to all of our panelists. I know this was a little difficult getting everybody organized coming from different parts of Africa, but we really appreciate you and thank you for all the work that you're doing. Reuven.
Thanks everybody. And I apologize, Abubakar, that we can't get to one last comment. We're actually over by 3 minutes and that's like really not allowed around here. So we're gonna have to wrap it up. I do want to note again that this is sponsored by the BECC conference, Behavior, Energy, and Climate Change. So if you're interested in this topic and others like it, join us in Sacramento, November 12th to 15th. And stay tuned for the next free webinar. You can go to beccconference.org and see the next one. Thank you so much for everybody, and we will see you next month.